You know, that feeling when you are dealing with a massive bureaucracy and it just suddenly hits you that the entire system seems perfectly designed in laboratory, specifically to make you give up and walk away.
Oh, absolutely. Like when you are trying to get a straight answer from a utility company.
Exactly. Or, maybe you are contesting a bizarre fee with your local government and you are just met with endless automated phone trees.
And vague emails. Or mysteriously missing paperwork. It is maddening.
It really is.
Right.
And it feels deeply personal in the moment, doesn't it?
It does feel personal, but, well, the friction is actually the point. I mean, we have all hit that wall where the sheer effort of trying to get a simple answer makes you question if it is even worth it.
Right. You look at the maze of red tape and calculate the hours of your life it will take to navigate it.
Yeah, and you start to think, maybe I should just let this go. And that instinct to walk away is exactly what these systems rely on to survive without having to change.
Well, today we are looking at what happens when someone just refuses to walk away. We are diving into a live, unfolding case study centered around a publication called 209 Connect Media.
Yes, specifically a fascinating newsletter post titled Local Retaliation to Regional Audit, written by David Sakairos.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore how a single instance of pushing back against a local school district uncovered a massive county-wide web of institutional stonewalling.
Which is such a wild escalation.
It really is. And more importantly, we're going to break down how David is using the actual science of organizational leadership to fight back.
Right.
He's basically dismantling that bureaucratic wall brick by brick.
This is such a vital situation to analyze, too, because, it moves past the typical narrative of just a frustrated employee or an angry citizen.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. What David has documented is the exact mechanics of institutional defense. It shows us how power structures attempt to protect themselves when they're challenged.
And what happens when someone applies rigorous academic pressure and just refuses to blink?
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this from the beginning. Because to understand the massive regional audit going on right now in the Central Valley, we have to start with the spark that lit the fire.
The inciting incident.
Right. For David Sakairos, that spark happened right at home with the Merced Union High School District, or MUHSD.
And this was back in 2023, correct?
Yes, in 2023, there was a pay equity fight. David engaged in protected speech regarding this issue, and the district's response was, well, it wasn't to evaluate the situation or look at internal accountability.
No, they chose retaliation.
Yeah, they abruptly terminated his employment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is the administrative equivalent of unscrewing the check engine light on your dashboard and pretending the car is fixed.
That is a great way to put it. And, that is a very common miscalculation for mid-level bureaucracies.
Really, it's just firing the person.
Yeah. Let's look at the psychology of that move by the district leadership. The underlying assumption is that the disruption is completely localized to a single person.
So they think if we get rid of him, we get rid of the problem.
Precisely. They calculate that an isolated firing will just amputate the issue. They rely on the suddenness of the action and the resulting isolation to sweep legitimate concerns like pay equity completely under the rug.
So the whole strategy is built entirely on the expectation of silence.
Yes. They figure if they remove the loudest voice in the room goes quiet.
And everyone else falls in line out of self-preservation. It is like an institution playing a game of whack-a-mole. They thought that by smacking the problem down, they'd keep things quiet and protect the district leadership.
But that highlights a fundamental flaw in this type of institutional thinking. Systemic mismanagement, or even outright corruption, rarely lives in just one room.
Right. It's not in a vacuum.
Exactly. It is almost never localized to a single bad actor or a single bad decision. It is structural. So by retaliating and trying to cut the thread, MUHSD inadvertently handed David the exact thread he needed to pull to make their whole operational system unravel.
Because David wasn't silenced. I mean, instead of walking away, he zoomed out.
He looked at the bigger picture.
Yeah. He realized that if a school district operates with this level of impunity, they probably aren't the only ones doing it.
Yeah.
So he started filing public records requests across various entities in Merced County.
He basically began systematically testing the transparency of the region's entire civic infrastructure.
Which is brilliant.
And it is the most effective diagnostic tool a citizen has. I mean, the public records request is a fundamental mechanism of democracy.
It is how you, the taxpayer, get to see the receipts, right?
Exactly. It is how you verify that the government is actually functioning within the bounds of the law.
And the findings in the source text present a stark contrast in how these requests are handled across the county. On one hand, you have agencies that perform well on audits.
The ones that actually comply with basic transparency laws.
Right. You ask for a document, they acknowledge the request, and they provide the document within the statutory timeframe.
Simple enough.
But on the other hand, you have entities that completely stonewall. They don't just delay, they create a fortress.
Right. They treat a routine Public Records Act request as hostile incoming fire.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of anyone listening who works in local government or, understands how stretched these offices can be.
Sure, that's fair.
Because we always hear about local agencies being underfunded, dealing with archaic software from the 1990s, and battling massive turnover.
Oh, totally. The resources are often grim.
So are these agencies deliberately acting with malice by stonewalling, or are they just terribly disorganized, underfunded, and incredibly slow? I mean, Hanlon's razor tells us we shouldn't attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence, right?
It is a totally valid point to bring up, and incompetence certainly plays a role in some delays. What's fascinating here is that David's research identifies a distinct, measurable pattern that goes far beyond just a lack of resources.
The pattern of what, exactly?
The source specifically characterizes this behavior as a defensive shield. Yes, underfunding exists, but these specific agencies intentionally blow past statutory deadlines by weeks or months.
Wow, weeks or months.
Yeah. They ignore follow-ups. They bury documents behind walls of deliberate administrative silence. So this isn't a clerk losing an email. This is a coordinated strategy.
Administrative silence. That is a chilling concept. It's the email that never gets a reply.
The phone call that goes straight to a voicemail box that is permanently full.
Right. It is the deliberate weaponization of waiting. Why would they do that?
Because they're betting entirely on citizen exhaustion.
Citizen exhaustion. Oh, man, that perfectly names the feeling we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive.
It really does. They assume that if they make the process painful enough, the friction will just become too high.
Because everyday citizens have jobs and families and lives to manage.
Exactly. A bureaucracy knows you don't have a team of lawyers on retainer. They know you probably can't afford to take a Tuesday off to go down to a county office and bang on a desk.
So it is a calculated wager that your stamina will run out before their legal delays do.
Precisely.
It reminds me of a moat around a castle. But instead of being filled with alligators to destroy the invaders, the moat is just filled with lukewarm oatmeal.
Lukewarm oatmeal. I love that.
Yeah, like it isn't deadly, but it is just viscous and annoying enough that you stand on the edge, look at the castle, and decide it simply isn't worth the swim.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. And honestly, 99% of the time, the oatmeal moat works flawlessly.
It keeps people out.
It maintains the status quo and protects institutional self-interest. But it is absolutely disastrous for public trust.
Because it shows they don't care.
Right. When an agency hides behind legal delays and bureaucratic friction, they basically confirm to the public that they view transparency as a threat rather than their fundamental duty.
And here's the critical pivot in the story of 209 Connect Media. David and his team did not look at the moat and walk away.
They definitely didn't.
They didn't succumb to citizen exhaustion. Instead, they tightened the screws. They responded to bureaucratic friction with relentless systematic pressure.
Which is exactly what you have to do.
Right. They're processing new data, advancing their filings, and building a complete chronological record of every single default and missed deadline.
Every single one.
Every legal violation is being documented, tracked, and exposed. And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just a grassroots fight fueled by righteous anger.
No, it's highly academic.
It is the core of David's doctoral research in organizational leadership at UMass Global.
And that academic integration completely shifts the battleground. I mean, usually when a citizen fights a local bureaucracy, it is a highly emotional battle.
Which is totally valid.
It is valid, but emotion eventually leads to burnout. The oatmeal moat wins. But by taking a cold, scientific approach to these highly emotional institutional failures, David neutralizes the bureaucracy's primary weapon.
He literally turned his retaliation into his dissertation.
He did, and the methodology he is applying is fascinating. Rather than relying on standard, sanitized theories of leadership, the ones that assume everyone is acting in good faith, David is using concrete historical frameworks.
Like what?
Specifically, he uses the 2009 audit standards to analyze the actual behaviors of these public entities.
Wait, let's pause and explain that. Because 2009 audit standards sounds like a term that puts people to sleep, but it is actually the secret weapon here.
It really is.
So how do these 2009 standards actually function when applied to a local government office that is stonewalling you?
Think of it as a strict diagnostic framework. It shifts the focus away from individual clerical errors and places it squarely on institutional design.
Okay.
So if an agency misses a statutory 10-day deadline to provide a document, the standard doesn't just record a late paper. It traces the failure up the chain of command.
Oh, so it asks why the paper was late at a systemic level.
Exactly. It asks, is there a lack of mandated training? Is there a deliberate policy of delay dictated by leadership? Are specific legal exemptions being misapplied systematically to hide unfavorable data?
So it connects the dots.
It maps the superficial symptom, a missed email, directly to a structural leadership flaw.
Wow. So he isn't looking at what these agencies claim to do in their glowing mission statements.
Not at all.
He is measuring their actual operational latency when their power is questioned.
Yes. By tracking the chain of custody of these requests and the specific nature of the delays, he is scientifically spotting what he terms systemic leadership disconnects and administrative decay.
Administrative decay. I love that term.
Very descriptive, right?
It makes it sound like rust on a bridge. You know, it's not a sudden explosion. It's just the slow, steady degradation of the structural integrity of the institution.
Yeah.
And you don't even see the rust until you stress test the bridge.
And the public records requests are the stress test. When an institution suffers from administrative decay, it can still function on a sunny day when no one is asking questions.
Sure, when everything is easy.
But the moment it is asked to perform its duty under scrutiny, the rust shows. The bridge groans. They resort to the defensive shield of silence because their internal processes are too decayed to actually comply with the law.
I have to push back again, though, because I can hear the counter-argument forming from the institutions.
Go for it.
If an office is already struggling with administrative decay, does bombarding them with hundreds of highly technical public records requests just make the problem worse?
That's what they will argue.
Right. Aren't we just pouring sand in the gears and keeping these public servants from doing their actual jobs?
That is the exact defense mechanism these agencies use to deflect scrutiny. They claim transparency is an administrative burden.
But is it?
Well, return to your bridge analogy. You don't avoid stress testing a bridge just because you're worried it might be weak.
Oh, good point.
If the structure is failing, you need to know exactly where the fractures are before it collapses completely. A public entity's actual job inherently includes compliance with the law and transparency to the taxpayers who fund it.
So transparency isn't an extra task. It is the core task.
Exactly. If a request for public information grinds their operation to a halt, that is proof that the operation is fundamentally broken.
Man, that reframes the whole concept of accountability. It takes it out of the realm of he said, she said, and puts it into an undeniable spreadsheet.
Yes. Data doesn't lie.
Right. A statutory violation on Tuesday, an illegal denial on Thursday. When you map the behaviors methodically, you strip the bureaucracy of its ability to gaslight the public.
They can't just throw their hands up and say, oh, we're doing our best. These things take time.
Exactly.
You hold up the data and say, no, according to the audit framework, this is a systemic leadership disconnect. It forces the institution to look in the mirror.
And it forces oversight boards and city councils to acknowledge the liability they are carrying.
Yep, the financial and legal liability.
So what does this all mean? Let's connect this directly to you, the listener.
Okay.
Because regardless of where you live, whether you're in the Central Valley of California, across the country, or on the other side of the globe, you interact with bureaucracies.
We all do, daily.
You face systems built to wear you down. And the overarching goal of 209 Connect Media is to build transparency and systemic change across these exact types of institutions.
And they achieve this through a very specific framework.
Right, the ARC cycle. That stands for Analysis, Rework, Conduit. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. The ARC cycle is a highly effective operational model for driving real-world change. Analysis is the phase we just discussed.
The public records and the data.
Yes. The cold, hard gathering of data, tracking the missed deadlines, and mapping the administrative decay using those strict audit standards.
It's basically doing the grueling homework that the agencies assume you wouldn't do.
Precisely. Then comes the critical middle phase, rework.
Okay, what happens in rework?
This is where the science is applied to force a cure. It isn't just about complaining that a system is broken. It is about taking that undeniable data and identifying exactly how the system needs to be restructured to function with integrity.
But how does that actually happen in practice? I mean, how does a citizen or an independent journalist actually rework a government agency?
By using the data to draft new compliance protocols and presenting them to the ultimate
Oh,
authority.
going over their heads.
Exactly. You take the audit results to a city council, a grand jury, or a state oversight board. You demonstrate the massive legal and financial liability the agency is incurring by violating public records laws.
Because money talks.
It sure does. You map their workflow bottlenecks, and you propose codified processes that replace those arbitrary delays with mandatory trackable steps. You literally use their own failures as the blueprint for their restructuring.
That is incredibly proactive. It's not just pointing out a leak, it's bringing the plumbing schematics to fix it.
Exactly.
And then we reach the final phase of the ARC cycle, conduit. This is where 209 Connect Media steps in as the publication.
Right, the publishing side of things.
They act as the channel to get this dense, highly technical information out to the public in a way that actually makes sense.
Because a conduit channels energy. All the brilliant analysis and rework in the world doesn't change a single thing if it stays locked inside a doctoral thesis on a university library shelf.
So true. Nobody reads those.
Right. So by publishing this research through a dedicated newsletter, David is creating a direct conduit to the community. He is feeding the intelligence back to the citizens so they can clearly see the mechanics of the power structures operating around them.
It empowers the community to realize they aren't crazy.
Yes. Validation is huge.
When everyday people feel like they're being given the runaround by local government, well, they actually are. It is a documented, calculated tactic.
And seeing that validated brings such a crucial level of clarity to people who have been fighting these small, invisible battles against local agencies for years.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material says, quote, "The light is reaching the dark corners across the valley."
That is the phrase that really stands out.
It is powerful. What David's work proves is that institutional accountability is not just a lofty, abstract ideal.
No, not at all. We often talk about transparency as if it's a magic wand that a newly elected politician waves on their first day in office.
And then everything is suddenly fixed.
But it isn't magic. It is an active daily practice. It is the unglamorous, relentless work of tracking, mapping, and holding power to the fire.
Just one mundane public records request at a time.
Exactly.
We've all heard the phrase, democracy dies in darkness. But this deep dive shows that it doesn't usually die from a cinematic villain turning off the sun.
It dies from administrative silence.
Yeah. It dies because a clerk in a county office decided it was easier to ignore an email, and a supervisor let them, and the citizen who sent the email just got too exhausted to follow up.
And slowly, day by day, that just becomes the culture of the institution.
That normalized dysfunction is the true danger of administrative decay. It lowers the standard of governance for an entire region until failure is just accepted as the way things are.
But 209 Connect Media is refusing to accept it. They are demonstrating that real transformation happens when you stare institutional failure in the face and refuse to blink.
And by integrating this fight with rigorous doctoral research, David is creating a reproducible playbook.
It's not just a one-off win.
Right. He isn't just fighting his own battle. He is developing a methodology. Other citizens, independent journalists, and advocates can look at the ARC cycle and apply it to their own local governments.
They can learn how to spot the defensive shields.
And how to counter the oatmeal moat of citizen exhaustion with systematic documentation.
And that completely removes the agency's ability to make excuses, especially when you consider that during this massive regional audit, some agencies actually passed with flying colors.
Wait, really? Some of them were fully compliant?
Yes. It highlights the vast difference between institutions that operate with integrity and those that rely on friction. You cannot claim it is impossible to meet a statutory deadline when the agency one town over is doing it flawlessly with the exact same resources.
Oh, that is such a great point. It kills the "we're underfunded" excuse instantly.
Absolutely destroys it.
Okay, let's bring all of these threads together. We started this deep dive looking at an abrupt, retaliatory firing by the Merced Union High School District.
A textbook defensive move.
Right. We looked at a district leadership team that thought by terminating David Sakaros over a pay equity dispute, they could bury a problem and protect themselves.
But instead of burying it, they inadvertently birthed a rigorous science-backed audit of regional administrative decay.
They miscalculated spectacularly.
They really did. They handed a researcher the exact initial data set he needed to prove his thesis on organizational leadership and systemic disconnects.
They even took a localized employment dispute, pulled the thread, and unraveled a county-wide pattern of agencies using administrative silence as a defensive shield.
And in doing so, he has exposed the primary weapon of stagnant bureaucracies everywhere.
Their total reliance on your exhaustion.
Which is why the integration of the academic research with the public conduit of the newsletter is so vital. It transforms personal retaliation into systemic reform.
That brings us right back to where we started today. That universal feeling of hitting a bureaucratic wall that's perfectly designed to make you walk away.
The oatmeal mode.
The oatmeal mode. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day and inevitably interact with one of these complex systems.
It's a great question to ask yourself.
If the primary defense mechanism of a failing local institution relies entirely on the assumption that you will eventually get too tired to care, well, what happens to the very foundations of our society when just one ordinary citizen decides they have endless stamina?
It is the ultimate disruptor, because when the friction fails to stop you, the system itself has no choice but to change.
The light is reaching the dark corners. Stay curious, stay sharp, and remember, as 209 Connect Media reminds us, the work continues. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.